Okay, remember the title? This one? Oh, wait, did we start the tape?
It's
Recording? It's recording, okay.
Yeah.
So this topic is totally different, but in the end, almost the same one. It'll be related a little bit. This is just, in case you didn't notice, there's always wars in the Middle East. Okay? And I want to try to give the biblical background for why there's so many wars in the Middle East and help us understand possibly why God put us in such a crazy place to become a nation. Because I think God wants us to live here. Right. If we're good. Now, everyone have this page? Okay, everyone have this page? This one, we got it? We'll start with this one, then there's another page in a minute. The other page in a minute. Just look at the page for a minute. This is from, it's not a satellite. Not the Enterprise. What's the space station Enterprise? That's from Star Wars. Star Trek. What's the one up there now? International Space Station, ISS. That's it. So this is a picture from like 20-some years ago. That was on the internet, and I backed up a little bit. What I wanted to show you, though, it's a picture of the Middle East, pretty much, and a little bit of Africa. But everyone see what's on the picture? First, make sure you see the Red Sea. Everyone sees the Red Sea? It's not red; it's black and white. But you see the Red Sea, okay? And then the Red Sea goes up and gets you to the Sinai Peninsula. And then you see the Mediterranean on the top left. Okay, now, to the left of the Red Sea, you see what's called the Nile River. There's Upper Nile and the Lower Nile. That might be the reason for Mitzrayim, the two Mitzarim. It's all theory, whatever it is. But that river, the Nile River, it became a center of civilization. And when you learned world history, probably sometime in high school, you learned about the Fertile Crescent, didn't you? And about Egypt. There were two centers of civilization in ancient times. One was Mesopotamia, one was Egypt. Who runs them? In Egypt, there's like some 25, 30 dynasties. You ever learn Egyptology or hear about it? They start counting, but every 20, 30, 50, 100 years or so, there's a new dynasty. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because it's a wealthy land. What makes Egypt such a wealthy land? The Nile. And we like to joke, Pharaoh was in denial. Okay. Now back to but the reason what makes Egypt is the Nile. I think it's like a god to them, and of course there's the sun god also. It's got a really bad name, Ra, and that's in Paro's name itself. Ra is a big word all through the Exodus story. But what I'm getting at is Egypt, from time immemorial, has been a center of civilization. Way before we became a nation. It's been around for a long time. Now, the other center is what I have on the right side. You see the Persian Gulf? Still there? Okay. Everyone see the Persian Gulf? Yeah. To the right of that? And below that is this Saudi Arabia Peninsula, whatever they call that. But most of it's Saudi Arabia. On the bottom, I think there's Yemen, which means down south. Yemen is always south and small is north. So there's but now you see that if you want to go from the Indian Ocean down there up through the Suez Canal, you ever understand why those Mitzarim are so important? I think they're called Mitzari Tiran, I think, aren't they? There's all down here, the Mitzari, the Tiran Straits down here. Okay, that's what started the 6-Day War, if you remember all the songs. But you see why that area is so important and what's going on with the Houthim and the Houthim down there. That's our topic today. I want you to the map. Go back to the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf, there's rivers leading into it, but it has two things going up, right? The one up to the left is the Euphrates, and the one going up straight is the Tigris. In Hebrew, the Hiddekel and the Prat. Now, where they first mention all these rivers, the Nile, the Hiddekel, and the Prat? In Gan Eden, right? And they seem to have one source underground somewhere, and it has four heads. But the Gan Eden is pretty much described in Chumash as basically the map of the Middle East. And what makes it alive? What makes it thing? There's we read if you want to take a quick look, you can look in Perek Yeah, it's part of, relates to last week's, the previous year. Open a Perek Yud Gimel in Breishit. Avram and Lot get into a little fight. Not they, but their workers. Remember the shepherds of Avram and Lot don't get along so well? And they want to split. But and what's Avram suggest? You go one way, I'll go the other way? Now, but he didn't say those. He says, if you go to the right, I'll go to the left. You go to the left, I'll go to the right. Now, most people mean, you go one way, I'll go the other way. And which way does Lot go, to the right or to the left?
Neither.
Okay, he goes neither. Because in the Bible, right means south, and left means north. Remember, Avram chases those 4 kings to the left of Damascus. Well, means north of Damascus. Yamin always means south, like Teman. Remember, Tzafona, Temana, Mizracha.
Because you're facing east.
Because the sun rises in the east, okay? And therefore, the sun rises in the east, and therefore that's looking forward. Therefore, how do you say forward in Hebrew? Kadima. And how do you say east in Hebrew? Kedma. Right? And therefore, what's behind you? Achora. The Yom HaCharon is the Mediterranean Sea, because that's to the west. So Kadima is forward, is east. Achora is west. Yamin is south. Small is north. Got that? Those are the biblical directions. All maps in ancient times were orientated this way. You understand? Look at maps; they're always looking. We're used to that being north, and all ancient maps that's east, because that's where the sun rises. Now, there was a custom, people who believed it, who worshipped the sun, because it's got to be a sun god. What direction did they face? What was the big moment for them? When the sun rose every morning, here's our God coming back again. And what do we do at sunrise? No, but what direction do we face? We face in the temple.
West.
We turn our backs to the sun at sunrise in the temple. And that's why Shechina b'marav. You follow? Understand? So at sunrise, Kapatikin, in the temple, what direction do we face?
West.
Not east. Not east is west. But we're not worshiping west, we're worshiping not east. Remember your mouth, not a? Because east, that's we're saying we're not worshiping the sun.
We and the sun worship Hashem.
Yeah. I guess so, yeah. Hashemayim misaprim kvodel.
But that's also why we see the sun and we say Shema Yisrael.
That we see sun and we're saying he's not our boss, God's our boss. Okay, that's it. Now, if that's the case, at mincha time, we shouldn't face west, should we? Because it looks like you're bowing down to the sun. So therefore, when did they bring the korban mincha? At high noon, right? It's called plaga mincha. You understand where plaga mincha comes from? Because in the temple, they didn't bring the korban at sunset. They brought it what's called plaga mincha, after a half hour after chatzot. If you know the sugya, I'm saying, and it's showing directions in Chumash are important. Now going back to Perek Yud Gimel, so he says, now look at pasuk Tet, I think, or pasuk Yud. Lot lifts up his eyes. Yeah, pasuk Yud. Vayisad Lot et einav, and what does he say? Now Avram's in Beitel. How do we know he's in Beitel? It says so on pasuk Daled. He returns to Beitel. When he comes back from Egypt, he goes back to his Mizbech in Beitel, calls out in God's name. He's making a name for God. Lot and Avram just came back from Egypt. What did Avram see in Egypt? Corruption, stealing wives and things like that. And he's going to come back and make a name for God and try to fix things, at least in his society. What did Lot see in Egypt? America. Okay. And therefore, when he comes back to Israel, what's he looking for? The closest thing to Egypt. Yeah. So therefore, by Lot et einav, what does he see? At kol kikar Yarden, see the word kol? Ki kulo mashke, kigan Hashem, keretz Mitzrayim. Got it? How's the pasuk end? Buachat soar. Is that strange? But that last phrase, what's it doing there? He lifts up his eyes, sees the whole kikar Yarden. It's all green, all luscious, just like Mitzrayim, just like Egypt. Nothing. And all the way down to Tzor. Where's Tzor? It's the southern part of the Dead Sea. Technically, it's how wide his vision was. But Tzor comes up later in the story, doesn't it? Okay. What happens in Tzor? Why is Tzor called Tzor? Which means it's narrow. It's one of the great sarcastic lines of Chumash, isn't it? His eyes are so big, he's looking for everything. And where's the guy end up? In this week's parsha, Vayeshev Lot B'Tzor, remember? And he's stuck in a cave with his daughters. Remember that story? He's looking for everything, ends up with nothing. Yeah? But that little line there, Bochat Zohar, that's a great example of biblical, we'll call it humor, sarcasm. You felt that line? It's got to be, because Zohar wasn't named. Why was it? It was named Zohar only afterwards. Remember? Al Kain Krulam become Zohar, because that's where they ran away to. So Chumash knows everything. Chumash knows what's going to happen. Maybe God doesn't. But Chumash, I'm therefore calling it Bochat Zohar because Chumash was given to us at Har Sinai. It's giving us the story to study. Now, back to Durham Beitel, and then so he's looking for. I'm saying Gan Hashem is like Eretz Mitzrayim. Now, why is that important in Chumash? If someone asked you have you heard of the land of Israel? Of course you would say yes. Now, it says, here's a map, show me the borders of Israel. Okay, let's try. What's the western border of Israel? What's our western border? Yeah, that's our big machloket with the Arabs. They hold it's our eastern border. They agree it's a border. We hold it's our western border, they hold it's our eastern border. But at least we agree that it's our border, now we can start negotiating. Yeah, what do you got? We have something we agree on. No. Okay, I'm going to go negotiate now. No. Okay. What's our eastern border? The Jordan, right? Yeah. The Jordan is a river going down from. What's the most northern part of Israel? What city is the northern part of Israel? Now, you ever Tel Dan? Tel Dan. It's in the War of the Four Kings and Five Kings also. By Dof Adan. That's the northern border of Israel. Tel Dan, up in the Panhandle. Now, no, in biblical times. Dan is the top, is near Metula basically, but it's in the Achula Valley, isn't it? And there's lots of water there coming down from the Hermon. There's lots of, if you've done Tulim up north, there's water. And the water from Dan comes into the Achula Valley and goes down all the way to the Dead Sea. Now, what are we going to name the river that brings waters down from Dan? Yeah, you knew that? It's not named after the basketball player. Came first. Yarden is the name in Chumash. Right? Nahar Yarden, because it's Yored from Dan. That's a real simple biblical history. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's simple as could be, isn't it? Yeah. In fact, the Kinneret is called the Kinneret in Chumash because it looks like a harp. Now, back to why do you do Yarden? You said someone said Jordan. The Jordan River is not the eastern river. It's not the eastern border. Now, give me a proof that it's our border. Could Moshe go into Israel? No. He was in Nevar Yarden, but he was right on the Jordan River, wasn't he? But he couldn't go to Israel. So the Jordan River has to be the eastern border. Now, someone objected. Someone objected and said the eastern border is not what? Oh, we have to go on heights. What? The east of the Jordan? So we'll take a look at that in a minute. But have you ever heard of our borders from Dan to Beersheba? Who's heard of the borders of Israel from Dan to Beersheba? What? In the time of Shlomo, we're living from Dan to Beersheba. Okay? And when we gather to go to civil war in Mitzpah and the Sefer Shoftim, from Dan to Beersheba, everyone gathers to kill each other. Remember the first civil war in Sefer Shoftim after Pitegesh Begiva in Perach Chaf Aleph, I think. Everyone gathers from Dan to Beersheba to go to war. No, there's only time there's unity in Shoftim is when we go to kill each other. Now, what I'm getting at is that it's clear that Dan to Beersheba are our borders, and the Mediterranean and the Jordan River are the borders. Okay, and but you're saying what? They get
They're east. They're east.
They're north and east, right? Now, who's ever heard of the borders of Israel from the river to the sea? Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Which river? From the river to the river.
A river to the river. What rivers?
River to the river. From the Euphrates to the Nile.
Yeah. Who's heard that our borders from the Nile to the Euphrates? Yeah. Now, is that some rabbinic hope, or is that in the Bible?
It's in the Bible.
Where? You were in Shul last week. Open up the first covenant between God and Avraham Avinu, where he promises you're going to conquer the land. Remember Yerusha? Look in Perek Tetvav, Pasuk Yudchet. Remember Brit Bein Abtarim, don't you? And actually start with pasuk zayin because that's important. Okay? Look in Brit Ben B'Tarim in Perek Tetvav pasuk zayin. What does God tell Avram? Vayim Hashem, Ani Hashem, Asher Tzeticha. I took you out of Mesopotamia to give you what? This land, Lirishta, which means to conquer. Everyone wants to know how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Remember, Baidah? And God tells him it's going to take some 400 years. Be patient. Not in your lifetime, but you'll ultimately get the land, but only after going through oppression and redemption and the whole story. Read the book of Exodus. Now go to Pasuk Yudchet. This is a covenant. Okay, what's it say? Bayomahu, Krat Hashem et Avram Brit Lemor. What's it say? L'zarachan atati et haaretz hazot. From Nahar Mitzrayim to Nahar Prat. Now look at the map I gave you. Right? What are our borders? That's like the whole Middle East, isn't it? If our borders are from the Nile to the Euphrates, we got all set. Look at the borders of the Nile. That's crazy, isn't it? Is there ever a Navi says, how come you haven't conquered Saudi Arabia? How come you not? I mean, not up until the Yom Kippur War, we almost got to we stopped at, remember, kilometer 101? But we didn't get all the way to the Nile. But even the right wingers didn't say we got to get all the way to the banks of the Nile because it belongs to us, right? People wanted to keep the Sinai, but no one wanted to take half of Egypt, did they? Right? Now, has the Nile River ever been a border before? No. Is there name me major cities on the globe with a big river going in the middle of the city? London, right? Paris. Basically, the reason why cities develop is because of big rivers. Because we need water. For Netilas Yadayim, for Tashlich, yeah, okay. Now, people need water because we're 90% water, we're 80% water. Where's the doctor? What percent water are we? Something like that. We're water. It's mine, right? Water's been around from before creation, hasn't it been? It was all. Got put some water up there, some down there, but water is the key to life. In case you didn't notice. Now, every society begins with a river. So it doesn't make sense that God would put our borders up until the east bank of the Nile and the west bank of the Euphrates. What I want to suggest is that God is choosing a nation in between those two rivers. And those two rivers doesn't mean the river, it means the civilization along the river. Because from time immemorial, there's always been a civilization in Egypt and always been one in Mesopotamia. Correct? Why? Because of the Nile and the Euphrates. And I think God's telling Avraham Avinu, you're going to be a nation, you're going to have a land. Where's it located? In between Mesopotamia and Egypt, but not including. Does that make sense now? Yeah. It's so logical, because why is God picking a nation? To be a blessing to other nations, and it's called location, location, location. You know what that means? If you know real estate, I need to be near a shul, a good shopping area, near a mall. Near Yeshiva Yala? Fuck. Oh, you guys figured that out, didn't you? So what I'm getting at is that if our job is to be a blessing to other nations, right, and to have an impact on other nations, that's a big theme in Chumash. Remember, V'nivruchu Chumash Pot Adama? In fact, before we're chosen, we talk about 70 nations, and God's not happy with their behavior, and then He picks Avraham Avinu to start a nation to have an impact upon them. But it's going to take a long time. But if in biblical times the centers of civilization are Egypt and Mesopotamia, what area does God give us set aside to be our land? Somewhere in between. Got it? And therefore, when it says from Nahar Mitzrayim to Nahar Prat, it doesn't mean up until the banks of the Nile and the banks of the Euphrates, but rather in between Egypt and Mesopotamia. Which is exactly what happens in history, right? Because all through biblical history, what do we find? There's always a superpower in Egypt, always a superpower in Mesopotamia. It might be Bavel, it might be Paras, it might be Ashur, it might be Aram. It's always changing. Egypt, it's always Paro, but we keep on changing. But it's Melech Sheshak, it's always a different dynasty. But the power is always changing because of the resources of those lands. And greed's been around even from before water. There's greed. And people have become nations, and people want more than, real history. Now, and therefore, our land is located in between without a good source of water. Mm-hmm. Because our only source of water would actually be the Jordan River, which doesn't do us any good because
Yarkon Dam.
Because it's below sea level. See? Below sea level, way below sea level. Because it's basically a big puddle, the Dead Sea, isn't it?
No.
Usually all the rivers, I read a book that all the rivers go to the sea. The sea never fills up. But there's one river that doesn't go to the sea. Because it goes to the dead end. Now what caused that? Whose fault was that? The Syro African fault. The big rift, when the big continental plate split between Africa and Asia. You know what happened billions of years before creation?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a big split called the South African Rift, and you can see it pretty much on the map, sort of. It's basically from the Red Sea going up to the right. You see the Red Sea where Eilat is, and you see Israel in that satellite map. It's really tiny, isn't it? Now, look at the difference from Dan to Beersheba and from the Jordan River. You see on that little map, can you see the Kinneret and the Dead Sea? You can see it if you look carefully. It looks like a spot. You can only see it if you know where it is. You see the land of Israel? It's like nothing. It's like the size of your fingernail and your pinky. Okay? And where from the Nile to the Euphrates is like 3-4 fingers. It's almost a tefach. Got that? So the land of Israel on this map, or what we call Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, from the Jordan to the Mediterranean, is a speck on the map, isn't it? So the borders are really complicated, aren't they? Are we just a drop on the map, or are we half the Middle East? Got my point? So my point is, we start with Eretz Canaan, and then we can expand. Now, I want to differentiate between Eretz Canaan, got it, and from the river to the river. What's the source for that? Remember, all through Chumash, God has two names, but it's one God. Remember, Hashem Hu Elokim. Say it 7 times. Yeah, believe it. But all through Chumash uses two names for God to explain our complex relationship with God. God creates B'Shem Elokim. He says Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. He brings a flood with both names. Recreates with both names after the flood. He picks Abram with both names. He makes a brit with Abram with both names. But the land of Israel in Brit Ben Abtarim is between those two nations, including, and look at the next line if you're still in Perek Tetvav. The last line is, after we get from Namri Samson and Arpad, then we get a list of, I think, 10 nations, last count, which includes the 7 nations, which are basically mostly descendants of Ham. Not all descendants of Ham, because Ham's son was also Mitzrayim. A lot of them, Canaan, but that's the land. What happened to all of them, we don't know, but they're all located between those two centers. Now, is that land going to go also to Yishmael, Avram's other descendants? That's a big machloket. Now, where's the first time we have the borders of Eretz Canaan? Now, first of all, as long as you're in Perek Tetvav, go to Perek Yud Zayin, called Brit Milah. You've heard of that? Brit Milah. Remember, look at Pasuk Zayin. You ever wonder what the covenant of Brit Milah is? I'm sure we gave a share on that one time. Okay. Circumcision is not the covenant, okay? Because circumcision in Hebrew is bris. Covenant in Hebrew is brit. You understand the difference? I'm joking. Bris doesn't mean circumcision, but it means a contract or a covenant. And Milah is the Od Brit. It's our reminder of the contract that we're God's people forever, because it's a Brit Olam. Therefore, to remember that you have to be. Remember we talked about before about plural. So to remember that you're committed to be God's people forever, we put the reminder that something has a lot to do with having children, in case you didn't figure that out ever. Got it? So that's the, but in Brit Milah, the Brit is Vakimotit Briti in Pasuk Zayin. And what's the Brit? Look in Pasuk Zayin. Vakimot Briti Beinu Bechem Mizacharcha Lotan Brit Olam. Yot Lachal Elohim, which is the biggest theme in Chumash. Vatemtu Lila'am, the 4th cup. Lachatchem Lila'am. In davening this morning, someone said at the end of Shema, Ani Hashem Elokechem, Asher Hotzeti Etchem Meretz Mitzrayim. Oh, Yot Lachal Elohim. That's why God took us out of Egypt. To fulfill. God fulfilled Brit Ben Abtarim to fulfill Brit Milah. You got it? Because Hashem Hu Elokim. Chumash up to something big. It's like, Ani Hashem Elokechem means I'm your boss. You're my people. It's all through Chumash. All through Nevi'im. Anu Amechat Eloheinu. We have the big song in Yom Kippur we sing all the time. But the idea is we have a partnership with God. We're His employees, but we identify with our boss, and we're supposed to love our job. Some people say that after they say Shema. Remember, V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha? You're an employee, but you should love your job, whether you like it or not. Now, back to, how do we get to that? So now look at Pasuk Chet. V'natati lecha zarcha acharecha et eretz mugurecha. What's it say? Et kol eretz Canaan lachuzat olam baiti lechem l'Elohim. Got it? Now, Zionists read this and say, what is Brit Milah all about? It's all about the land of Israel. I used to teach that. Okay, I'm still a Zionist, don't worry. But but in Chumash, the Brit is Leot L'Chel Elohim. The vehicle through which we fulfill that Brit is by being a nation. To be a nation, you need a land. But a land that's got an impact on other nations needs to be located along the international trade route that connects those two. It's not just in between Mesopotamia and Egypt, but it's right along the trade route that connects those two societies together. So we don't have a good water source. Actually, we need rain, I think. We'll read about it soon in Chumash. But we need rain for water. So if we're good, what's God promise?
Rain.
We'll get rain. If we're bad, He'll send us a wake-up call. Now, some people pray for it every day. Starting from November 7th, right? I mean, starting from Zayin Cheshvan, yeah. But in Bavel, they're not going to pray for rain in Cheshvan. They wait till December. You know why? Because the last time it rained in Bavel, in Cheshvan, there was a big flood. Because when did the flood begin? Remember, on the 17th of Cheshvan? No, but seriously, you don't pray for rain in Bavel, because too much rain in Mesopotamia, it gets flooded. What? In Israel. In Bavel? No, Yud Zayin Cheshvan, the 17th. The 17th day of the second month was the flood. I remember because it's my son's birthday. Now, back to, it's coming up soon, I think, like next week. Maybe we'll go to Iran to celebrate. The Air Force will go there. Now, back to, I'm sorry. But you see Eretz Canaan? So Eretz Canaan is unique to Brit Milah. Got it? And that's where you're traveling. Now, we'll get to Eretz Canaan in a minute. Where's the first time we have the borders of Eretz Canaan? So you said Parshat Maseh, but the borders of Eretz Canaan are earlier. It's earlier in Chumash, but that parsha, it's so boring that people will never get that far, because everyone knows the flood story, but by the time they get out of the ark, we don't pay attention. But the Baal Koreh knows. Open up Perek Yud in Sefer Breishit. Look at Perek Yud. I think that's the 70 nations. But look at the header of Perek Yud. How does Perek Yud begin? Eile Todot B'nei Noach, not Noach. That was beforehand. That was Perek Tet or Perek Vav. I'm sorry. Eile Todot B'nei Noach in chapter 10. Who are B'nei Noach? Shem, Cham, and Yafet. Got that? Now look at the end of Perek Yud. What's the last line? See how structured Chumash is. Eile Todot Mishpot B'nei Noach. B'mishpotam Lotodotam, okay, B'goyim, Ume'ele Nifredu HaGoyim. Got it? And we call that, now, count up with the nations, you need to get to 70. Like, you need to get to 7? It's got to be 70, because at the end of the book, there's 70 nefesh going down to Egypt. But 70 is a big number, but count carefully, you can find 70. But you've heard of the 70 nations, right? Shem, Cham, and Yafet. Now, look in Perek Yud, how many parshiot are there? How many little paragraphs are there? 1, 2, 3, right? What should they correspond to? Shem, Cham, and Yafet, right? Okay, what's the first one? No, not the first one. We start with Yafet. But to our surprise, after Yafet, in the same parsha, we have who? We have Cham. We have Yafet and Cham in the first one. And then we focus on Cham's special child, Canaan. Because somewhere it says V'cham Avi Canaan. Remember that? That was back after the flood when he got drunk. Remember? But Cham also had Mitzrayim. Cham has a lot of kids, including Egypt. But Canaan is one of his kids, and Canaan gets a special parshiah. See that? Pasuk, what is it? Pasuk Tedvav. Got it? And Canaan has how many kids? Pretty most of the 7 nations are there, right? Prizi, Vusi. He's got a whole bunch of them. Yeah. But unlike any other nation, right? Canaan is a whole big family, and unlike any other nation, we don't have borders of anybody except for Canaan. Now look at Pasuk Yotet. What's it say? Right? This is unique. Vayigva Knani, from where? From Sidon, if it's left. I mean, you've heard of Sidon?
Yeah.
We're there a lot. I mean, unfortunately, Sidon is center of Lebanon. It's a big port city in Lebanon called Sidon. From Sidon all the way down to Aza. That's a pasuk for the Air Force, isn't it? Right? From Sidon to Aza. Things have been changed. Do you understand my title? History of Wars in the Middle East. Those are major cities. Those are the natural borders of Eretz Canaan. Now, including Sidon, or not including Sidon? But from Sidon to Aza, got it? Which is the coast, isn't it? What part of the coast? The coast is opposite the Mediterranean basin. Got it? Now, go farther north, Tripoli, it's close up to Turkey. But what's unique to this section, it's opposite the end of the Mediterranean. And down to Aza, because south of Aza is already Egypt. Not Egypt, Sinai. Now, that's one border. And then look at the other border. Okay? From what? And then from Sidon again, going down where? Read it for me. Read. Start. Just read Pasuk Yotet. Who wants to read for me? Have patience. Ad Aza, got it. Elisha. Okay. So I go from Sidon and go all the way down to where? Down to the Dead Sea. That's the eastern border. And along the Mediterranean, that's the western border. So you understand Canaan? I go from up north, and basically I have to basically go along the. If I go from Sidon along the Litani River, it'll take me to basically Marjayun, or a little north of Metula, and then you go down the river, down to Sdom, in the Dead Sea. That's Eretz Canaan, or basically that's down to Beersheba. That's Eretz Canaan, the Gvulatel. Now, if I want a more detailed thing, what you mentioned before, fast forward to Parshat Maseh. That's going to be Bamidbar chapter 34. Perek Lamed Daled in Bamidbar. I think it's pretty explicit there. Because at the end of chapter 33, there's a commandment to conquer the land of Canaan. And now we need to know what we have to conquer. So again, Perek Lamed Daled in Sefer Bamidbar. Let's see how it begins. Lamed Daled. Sabed b'nei Yisrael v'amarti alehem ki atem ba'im me'eretz Canaan zot ha'aretz asher tibal lechem v'nachal eretz Canaan ligvuloteha. Oh, now we have a much more precise borders of Canaan. Where are we begin with? Where are they now? They're in Ever Yarden, a little north of the Dead Sea. So they see the Dead Sea. V'ayad lechem pat Negev. What's your southeastern border? Min Bartzin Ayidei Adom v'ayad lechem gvul Negev miksei Yam HaMelech Chidma. So if I go to the south of the Dead Sea, got it? And south of the Dead Sea, you have what's at the end of Midbar Tzin, and that's the southeastern border. And then I go along south of the Dead Sea and cut across through the valleys, through Nachal Tzin, basically through, where's Ben Gurion buried? Stable Care. You ever been to his kever?
Yeah.
Turn your back to his kever, and there's a giant valley, right? Nachal Tzin. And the other side of the valley is Inuvdat. Okay? And that there's tons of water there because when it rains, everything pours into there. And that's why Kadesh Midbar Tzin, when we hang out in the desert, that's the best source of water in the desert. One year they ran out of water and they needed a miracle. But boy, the people complained. Moshe Torah, remember? That's also in Sefer Bamidbar. But that's the southern border. And then we go from there. And then it goes to Malek Rabim, if you know your Negev, and then for Tzina, and it ends up where? It goes south of Kadesh Barnea, and ends up in El Arish, basically, to Nachal Mitzrayim. Okay? Now, Nachal Mitzrayim isn't Nahar Mitzrayim, because the Nahar is a Nahar, Nachal is a Nachal. What's Nachal Mitzrayim? It's Vadi El Arish. Understand? You know where Vadi El Arish is? A little south of Gaza. Now, I'll show you in a minute what the logic of all this is. Then we go along the Mediterranean, all the way to the highest mountain up north. See Pasuk Vav, like Gvol Yam HaGadol, Ugvol Zeh Yelechem Gvol Yam, and Gvol Tzafon, from the Yam HaGadol all the way up to Horahar. Where's Horahar?
different.
There's horror everywhere. Wherever there's a mountain range, and the highest mountain, horror. Now, is that Mount Lebanon? Probably. Yeah. Is that Mount Lebanon south of the Litani or north of the Litani? It's the Upper Galilee, isn't it? It's the Western Galilee, Upper Hills. But basically, it's probably the mountain on top of the Litani, because the other side is going to be the Hermon. But we're doing about the northern border, pretty much the Litani in south. It gets a little complicated, but you end up in Bar Jayun. Where's that? What? On a high mountain in the Negev, near Malek Rabim. But wherever there's a lot of mountains, and there's the high mountain in the middle of them, that's called Har Har. It's not the name of a mountain, it's the name of a high mountain amongst other mountains. But it's an easy way to mark a border, because that's like, where's our border with Syria? The Golan Heights, right? So if you look at Golan Heights, the highest point in the Golan Heights between Israel and Syria is our border. It's called Kavatilim. You know the volcanoes? So the volcanoes, they erupted up north, and they spread their lava everywhere, but the volcanoes erupted on the highest point in the Golan Heights. That becomes not them. It's a natural border, Har. But that's north, and then we go down. Lavo Chamat is basically, it's not Chamat, Lavo Chamat is Bikat Lebanon today, or what's left of it. And then we go, then Yatzak V'Sifrona, and ends up Chatzarinan, that's Mar Jayun, and that's the northern border. And then you go down Gvul Kedma, from Chatzarinan, Shvama, and then the Gvul goes down to Rivla, to Ayin, that's, and your Gvul, Machal Ketef Yam Kinneret Kedma, and then it goes down to the Jordan. You understand? It's basically Eretz Canaan, including the Litani up north. Basically, where all the natural border of Israel is exactly the what we're fighting over now. No, not that. The north border is the Litani. That's the natural border, and our border with Lebanon was just some line the British made. You know how we got that border with Lebanon? To win World War I or II, I forget which one. I think one. Yeah. Egypt needed everybody. Britain. They won in the end, but they had to make promises to everybody, and that they promised the Middle East to Faisal. That everyone was promised the Middle East, including Weizmann. Follow, and which is that's where the whole conflict begins, because everyone sure belongs to them. Everyone's narrative, hey, the British promised it to us, and they also promised it to the French, because they needed the French to help them. So it worked because they won the war, and then we're paying the price because they promised it to everybody. So Faisal thought it belongs to him, Hussein thinks it belongs to them. And now, in the meantime, Britain and France divided it up half and half also, and they said, to help us, we'll give you the northern half. And they drew a line, the mandate, remember? Britain kept everything, Palestine and Jordan, and France got Lebanon and Syria. That's why Macron's a big shot now in this negotiations, because they've been now. But there are too many Christians and Muslims fighting with each other. So Lebanon's for the Christians, Syria's for the Arabs. So Syria's for only Arabs, and the Christians, there's some left in Lebanon, but who took them over? And that's all. Remember all the civil wars between the. That's the background. All I'm getting at is that Lebanon, our border with Lebanon was simply a line on a map, which doesn't make any sense. That's why the border there is so crazy. It's not a natural border at all. The Jordan River is a natural border. The Mediterranean is a natural border. Now the Negev border makes sense also, because you can't survive without water. So I'll show you one more set of psukim, which is important. Go to Sefer, you're on your way there. Go to Sefer Devarim, Perek Yud Aleph. Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud. Moshe is giving his final speech. He's about to die. We're about to cross the Jordan and enter the land of Israel. And Moshe wants to tell them how important the land of Israel is and what you need to do to survive there. Have it Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud. See that? And everything I just told you is right here. Ki ha'aretz asher tabashama l'rishta. The class is still. Okay, I got time. Start again. Let's say Ki ha'aretz asher tabashama l'rishta lo keretz Mitzrayim hi asher tzata misham. In Egypt, how do you water your field? With irrigation ditches. Now, remember all the irrigation ditches in the Nile Delta? How do you water your field? You turn on the faucet. but they didn't have faucets back then. What they did? In irrigation, you just kick the dirt. You kick the dirt to close it, and you'll kick open the dirt to water it. How'd you water your field in Egypt? With your foot. By doing what? You didn't need a plumber. Understand? You just kick with your foot, open it, and click with your foot and close it. Alright. We don't have that in Israel because the Jordan's way below sea level. And we don't have the Nile Delta. So along the Jordan, it's Kula Mashkeh, but it doesn't help until we learned how to pump it up. It's our national water carrier. There's only water down in the valley. So now, Ha'aretz asher tava sham el rishta, Eretz harim of ko'ot, v'imtar shamayim tishtamayim. Our water source is matar. Got it? Eretz asher Hashem doreshota. God looks after this land. Tamid einei Hashem lekecha ba mirishit shana achrit shana. How does God watch over our land? What's einei Hashem mean? It's like hashgacha, right? What's the word for a spring in Hebrew? Why? Ayin, like ayin gedi in ayin is because an ayin is because it's the source of tears. V'iteinu shimayim ve'inim makor dima. So the ayin is the source of water. A mayan, and therefore, einei Hashem is beautiful wordplay because what supplies water? God. But God supplies water based on our deeds. So God watches over us, and how do we know we're doing good or bad? And rain. And look at the next line we should know by heart. Im shemati shema mitzvotai, v'natem tartzchem bito. And if you have water, you have crops, you have grain. If you don't keep my Torah properly, what will happen? I'll use the rain to hold back. And therefore, what happens next? And then you won't have produce. You have to go down to Egypt to get food. The little food you have, people will fight over, and you have a war in the Middle East. Again, understand? So so what a terrible place to live in. Isn't Egypt much better? Because you have a constant supply of water. Who wants to be dependent on God? Unless you want to be dependent on God. Understand? And therefore, Avram wants to be dependent on God. He wants to get He wants to get a report card. Understand the difference? If I want a barometer to know how I'm doing, then I want to live here where I have to behave properly to stay alive. If I don't want God in my life, right? So go to Egypt. Go to. You understand what happens to Lot? His decision. Because he doesn't want to need God. He wants an insurance policy called water. Now, that's why water. There's a whole Masechet called Tanit. Remember, we have fast days if it doesn't rain in Cheshvan. That's why it's so central in our prayers. Of course, we need water, but because water is a tool, according to Chumash at least, the guy uses as a barometer to know how we're doing. Therefore, it's really important to us. So we don't pray for rain. We pray to remember that rain is based on our behavior. And if that's understood, then it becomes transformative prayer. Then you can ask, what's good behavior? I used to ask your local rabbi, but now I say ask your local navi. Or read them if there are no more left. With your local, I'll control myself on local rabbis. Now your rabbi's fine. It's just talk about the rabbanut. Okay.
So that's why we have different amounts of rain and different types of rain.
Now, I'll explain your thing. Look at the other page now real fast. I'm running out of time. Everyone have the second page?
Yeah.
Now we explain the wars of the Middle East. Because of those two, everyone have this page? Here, pass it around if you don't have it. Anyone have seen it? Here, pass that around. Anyone see the page? Pass them to the back. Here. Pass these around. Anyone who needs them? Okay. This page, there's a nice timeline here. I do Tiolin when I used to, when I was young. So there's a timeline of Jewish history on the bottom. You can play with it later on.
What's the dark line?
The shir. No, and the copy machine, someone spilled coffee? Okay. Anyone who's worked with a copy machine knows what I'm talking about, right? Here's my coffee I brought for show and tell. No. The share. Listen. Pretend this much isn't there for a minute. Egypt is down on where your left thumb is on the map, right? Mesopotamia is up north in Syria. Got it? Now, because those are centers of civilization, people would travel for trade, right? There's things in Mesopotamia and there's things in Egypt. Egypt is like a grain capital, isn't it? People came from all over to get grain in Egypt. Even your ancestors. When there was a famine in Israel, he went down to Egypt. There's a whole book about it. Now, Mesopotamia is big also. There's caravans going from Egypt to Mesopotamia. That's a trade route, isn't it? Now, the best trade route hugs the Mediterranean coast, not along the coast, but like 10, 15 kilometers in, basically Highway 6 today. Highway 6 is pretty much the ancient trade route. It's right, goes south, like, there's a mountain range, there's a coastal plain which is too marshy, and then the farther in, you have good, like Rosh Ha'ain, what do you call it? What's that city? Lachish? Not Lachish, yeah, Lachish is part of it. Tel Gezer, right? That's where Kfish, by bordering with Latrun, it's the edge of the coastal plain before the Shvela. What? Even that was a big time toll road, and therefore, because of the trade on that road, everyone wanted to control that road, and therefore this area is either controlled by Mesopotamia or Egypt. Now, God gives us the land that's located where? Right? Along the trade route, but if you're not a superpower, you can't control the trade route, and therefore, where are Avot living? There's a mountain range that goes from Beersheba to Shechem. You see that? Which is called Gabahar, or Eretz HaEmori. Because at the Emori, by Emori Yoshev Alahar. Remember? Lachni ala al Yad HaYarden. Right? The Amorites are in Har Emori. That's how Ebenezer and Rashbam explain. And that mountain range is the heart of Israel. Now, follow biblical history. When Avram comes to the land of Israel, the first city he comes to is Shechem. See that? That's on the northern edge of this mountain range. From Hebron he goes to, from Shechem he goes to Beit El, right, which is Ramallah today. Ramallah is Beit El, where Yaakov had his dream and everything. Yeah? From then he goes south to Hebron, and then he goes to Beersheba. How many stories about the Avot are in Shechem, Beit El, Hebron, and Beersheba? All of them, aren't they? Why are those big cities? Because each of those cities is along Highway 60. Highway 60 is the top of the mountain range that connects all the cities together. But each city has access to Highway 6. That's which they're building those now also. Like 431, 531. Those are all in valleys. Where are the valleys? There's a valley from Shechem, which is hard to see on the map here. But the main valley that connects the mountain range, the middle of it, to the Shvela is Emek Ayalon. You've heard of Emek Ayalon? Right? Now, along Emek Ayalon, it goes from Ramallah to Latrun. You ever been on Highway 443? Yeah. That's exactly Emek Ayalon with a couple of changes because of things. But that's called, what's that city there? No, that's at the end of it. But in the middle, Beit Charon. There's always wars in Beit Charon. Remember in Yeshua? There's Beit Charon with the Maccabees. Beit Charon, that's the main access to the mountain range. And that's why that road was controlled by the Jordanians. And in the War of Independence, we couldn't get that road. Instead, we built the Burma Road. And that's how we have Highway 1 today, which is a total mess. That's Highway 1. 443 is a natural highway, isn't it? Because you can almost do it the whole thing in neutral. Once you pass Machane Ofer. Our Highway 1, with dynamite and blasting mountains, we're still going on a roller coaster up and down, right? See all the tunnels we have there? Highway 1 is not a natural highway. It was a necessity because of Ben Gurion's Narishkeit to keep Jerusalem at all costs. If you know the history in the partition plan, Jerusalem was an international city like Berlin, and we're supposed to have the coastal plain. But he was adamant to hold on to Yerushalayim. If you know the story of the Battle of Jerusalem, basically, and the war that was the Independence War, pretty much. Was it worth it? I hope so, but it cost us a lot. If you know the stories. That's the Palmach, and that's made Rabbi and so famous, etc., and Yigal, etc. Now, and then from Hebron, if you've been to Hebron, Nachal Beit Guvrin, it's called Fish Tarkumia. There's a highway from Hebron that takes you right to Beit Guvrin, and then Lachish, and then Ashdod and Ashkelon, and the port cities. That's why Hebron's a big city. And from Hebron, you go a beautiful keel right down Nachal Rugo, takes you right to En Gedi in the Dead Sea. And then when the Dead Sea was smaller, you could cross the Dead Sea to Moab, near Betzada. That's a different thing. And then you have, now, in Beersheba, the smudge on the map is the ancient highway, got it? The ancient highway, which is Highway 6 today, is the smudge on the map. And therefore, in biblical history, people living on the top of the mountain range can make a living by doing what? By growing spices and things like that, and goods, and selling them to the caravans going down to Egypt. So as long as you didn't bother the people, the superpower on the highway, you could live on the mountain range and make some peace deals, etc., and negotiate, you'll be fine. If you're living on the mountain range and you want to spread your wings and take over the highway, right? You better have a big army. Who's the first one to do that? King David, right? The first time we control in Jewish history the coastal plain is the first monarchy. Now, God, because he's doing Mishpat and Tzedakah, he was able to do that, or vice versa. Depends if you're reading Mariv or Hatzofer, or depends what newspaper you're reading. What comes first? But David's military greatness starts with Shobah. David, his ability to get rid of the Plishtim. Remember, doesn't he fight the Plishtim? The Plishtim took over that highway, but they came from Crete. Remember, Plishtim Mikaftor? There's a Phoenician people, a sea people, that take over, and they become an existential threat to us. Therefore, our kingdom begins. We need a king because of the Plishtim, Sefer Shoftim, and we become a superpower because we got rid of the Plishtim. The Plishtim took it over, and then we took over the Plishtim, and we became a superpower until we had Sinat Chinam, and we split our kingdom. Remember, Yeravam, Rechavam, and then who took over? Paro Shishak. Remember that story? And there goes Rechavam, and then basically, do you understand? I'm trying to explain why there's wars all the time here. Because in the Middle East, you're always the 4 kings and the 5 kings. It's the same idea. 4 kings from Mesopotamia are taking 5 little kings here in Canaan, and Avram chases them all the way up to the Golan, to Damascus, because that's a big city on the way to the Euphrates. But that's Eretz Canaan. Once we take Eretz Canaan in halacha, what can you do? You can spread out. But I'm just showing you that the reason why there's so many stories about those big cities, the biblical cities. They're on Highway 60, on the top of the mountain range. Each major city has a trade route going east-west. Now, where's Avram calling out in God's name? If calling out in God's name, which is the big theme of Avram Avinu, remember the Kro B'Shem Hashem? He starts in Beit El. It's the first time he does a big, because Beit El is on the crossroads between Highway 60 and then going from Jericho to Jaffa. Understand? It's Beit El. There's a beautiful valley from Beit El to Jericho. It's Highway 3 on the thing, and then from Beit El, it's Highway 443 to Ayalon all the way down to Yaffo, basically, to the coast. Now, that city is strategic. The Givonim are right there, aren't they? That's why they make peace, because they know they're next in line. That's why the 5 kings fight them. You understand the reasons for all the wars? So I didn't have time to go into it, but that's a share already in Sefer Yoshua. And Yoshua's whole conquest has to start divide and conquer. He takes the mountain range first to the south and then to the north. But it takes a long time till they conquer it. Now, so that's the Highway 60. Whenever we control the coastal plain, we're a giant monarchy. Achav Yoshaphat work together, we have control again. Yehu starts his rebellion, we lose it again. We'll lose it to Aram, later we'll lose it to Ashur. Ashur comes in, boy, they mess us up. Remember, they defeat Lachish, the big city, and Ashur takes over. Ashur leaves, Bavel wants to take over. But between, when Yoshia, if you know that story, he spreads his wings and we're a superpower again. What I'm getting at is that when you understand the geography of Israel, it explains why sometimes we're a small little country on top of the mountain range, and sometimes we're, what do you call it? We're a major superpower. Now, in order to be a major superpower, we have to be worthy, so God will help us build our economy and have military success and make sure there aren't nations fighting for us if we keep his mitzvot properly. The second we don't keep his mitzvot, read Yirmiyahu, Yeshayahu, God sends Hoyashur Shevet Api, he'll send Bavel, Abdi. No, God always tells us, the Nevi'im come and warn us, if we don't use our prosperity properly, we don't develop a nation representing God properly, there's always nations in the background who are going to come and give us a hard time. On the other hand, if we keep the Torah properly, we have the potential to be a blessing to other nations. And that's but the whole point of this year was the geography of Israel, its location between those centers of civilization. Okay? And its climate, which is really tricky, got it? Is a perfect place where God's keeping us in check all the time. Now, someone who wants to be challenged and wants to take that challenge is taking a big risk, but with great potential. It's like an investment. You guys know investments probably. Right? There's risky investments that have great return, but you're taking a big risk because you might go bankrupt also. But it's a big risk, but it requires diligence inside. But there's a direct connection between our geography and the land God promises us and the climate we're in, that hopefully will remind us what God expects from us to be good, and we always have reminders of how we have to behave. Now, when things go bad, what we do, I think I gave that share last time with Tfilat Shlomo about prayer in times of war. I think about a year ago when the war. That was the share I gave during. What prayer is about. When you pray, you don't pray for rain. You pray to remember why God might hold back the rain. What we say in Shema. Therefore, prayer has to be transformative. Again, what we're doing wrong, what we need to do better, you can argue, but at least you want to try to do good. You can argue maturely how to do that. But whenever we fight with each other and have a split kingdom, other superpowers come and take us over. Whenever we're united and keeping the Torah properly, we spread and we become a superpower. But God wants us to be a superpower on the condition we use that power to sanctify God. The second we're not doing it right, that can't go on forever. But that's a big biblical theme. I'm just trying to show you in the shir today how our geography, when you understand it, explains probably why God picked this land for us, and why the land has such great potential, and why there's always wars in the Middle East, which was the other title. Question? Bill, you had? Oh, yeah, you have a question, yeah?
So it has nothing to do with the rise of Egypt and the rise of Mesopotamia, the fall of Egypt and the fall of Mesopotamia.
So that's the question. Are those powers becoming strong because that's using them? If I want to run my country, do I know who do I align myself with? Because all the politicians are telling the kings align with Bavel, align with Egypt. Remember Isaiah? Yirmiyahu. We read Ma lach l'derech Mitzrayim lishtot mei nahar b'derech ma derech Mitzrayim lishtot mei shichor ma derech Ashur lishtot mei nahar. Right. So notice you think you can solve your problems by making good political alliances. That's not the main point. You might need to, but the main thing is if you want it to work, you have to keep the Torah properly. Yeah. Oh, we're getting started. Yeah, they learned in a non-profit yeshiva. Now, one last thing I want to share with you. I want to remind you on our friends in Chutz La'aretz, right? Some people hold that if we're chosen to be at the center of civilization, if civilization moves westward, and the center of civilization and business is now in New York City, so the best place for Jews to live should be in Manhattan, or maybe in Brooklyn, or in Teaneck, etc., Riverdale, etc., because they don't have a bigger thing. So we can make zchut on those who decided to live there. Okay. Yeah. Moshe wants to see it. Yeah, but he. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And okay, thank you.
I've always had a question. Nobody's been able to answer me. Me'acharit Hashana, the Hey Ayideh, ad Acharit Shana,
From the rainy season to the end of the rainy season.
Why without the Hey Ayideh?